Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Money Magazine. We are doing an Instagram Live today. I know I've said this 3 times already, but you guys are so amazing because you keep tuning in. We're having some technical difficulties, but once we have Kim on the line, we will get her in here. We're doing an Instagram Live today to talk about career and how to restructure your resume if you were laid off during the pandemic, how to kind of repivot some of your skills. We are waiting on Kim Cummings. She is a career and leadership expert. She is so incredible. You guys have to go follow her. Her Instagram handle is Kim B Cummings. Are you here? Do we have you?
I think you do.
Okay.
Yay!
It works. Thank you all so much for being so patient and for tuning back in. Again, this is Kimberly B Cummings. She is a career and leadership expert. If you guys have any questions on career, if you were laid off during a pandemic, if you need help or have very strict questions on restructuring your resume, definitely drop them in below. Your question might be shown on screen. So Kim, we are so excited. You have been doing an Instagram takeover for us all day long. We had some technical difficulties, as everyone knows, but you are here and we are on board. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your business, manifest yourself, and exactly what you do to people of color and navigating the workplace.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks again for bearing with me. I don't know what was happening. So my name is Kimberly B Cummings. I'm the founder of a company called Manifest Yourself, which is all about helping women and people of color navigate the world of work, make more money, and ultimately position themselves as leaders. I've been working in the career development space for a little over 10 years now, and I'm so passionate about just making sure that people know the exact actionable steps they can take to change the trajectory of their career. So many times you're just trying this and trying that, and you're hoping it works, or maybe it's your resume, maybe it's your interview, you don't know what it is. I'm all about really figuring out what is the issue and how can we change it, inspire you, activate new skills to make sure you're positioning yourself to get the roles and experiences that are going to take you to the next level.
I love that. I think that's so great. The fact that you focus on women and people of color is such an important part of what you do. So thank you for that. Well, as everybody knows, we are in quarantine. We are under this crazy pandemic that has really affected and kind of rocked our job security and the economy. Over 36 million Americans are unemployed. 2 million of them just filed last week. So I know many of our viewers and many of our readers have sent in questions asking what they can do in order to find jobs. Our place is hiring right now. How can you transfer your skills? Should I keep up my LinkedIn? So these are all things we're going to be tuning in and talking about today. And guys, don't forget, those of you watching, please drop your questions in below. And some of your questions might be shown on screen. So Kim, tell us a little bit about the job market right now. Are there places hiring?
Yes, there are still places that are hiring. I think as much as we're hearing that places are not hiring, there are still places that are hiring. I just shared a link the other day, and if anyone reaches out to me, I will give you the link. I just don't have it with me at this exact moment. But there's a lot of people who are curating lists that showcase companies that are still hiring. A lot of it is put in by users, so people who are currently interviewing, people who've gotten job offers. So it's as up to date as humanly possible. I say there still are people hiring if you're going on LinkedIn every day, if you're linking on LinkedIn, if you're looking on Indeed, if you're looking on company sites, all over the place. There are so many different places that are hiring. So I wouldn't say get discouraged and just kind of stop applying because nothing's available. There still are jobs that are open. And yes, like I saw someone put up, like, are there like dummy jobs? A lot of places say that, if I'm applying to a job, is it really open? I'm like, the hard part is that you won't really know. So if you have contacts at organizations, reach out on LinkedIn and find out. A lot of companies, it's taking them time to clean out their job boards to really figure out what is still happening and what is not happening due to COVID-19. So there's no perfect science, but do your best to find people in your network who you're able to connect with to get that real-time information. I always tell people that it's important to have insider information.
Definitely. And I have to say, LinkedIn has been such a really great resource for my career so far. Almost every job that I've had, I found on LinkedIn, and using, the resources that LinkedIn has and other job portals is really huge, and being able to kind of tap into those networks is major. So what if some of our viewers were in the middle of a job interview and the pandemic hit? What should they do right now?
So reach out to whatever contacts you have to figure out what the status is. Some companies had to quickly decide, you know what, we're not hiring, we're kind of halting for a little bit. Other companies, it may still be happening, but imagine from the company standpoint, depending upon how large the company is, there are so many folks they had to transition to working from home in such a small amount of time that hiring folks and getting people onboarded wasn't the number one concern because they had to deal with everybody who was there already. So I would 100% reach back out at a regular cadence, talk to your recruiter, talk to your sourcer, talk to anyone at the company, and continue to follow up on a regular basis just to figure out what is the status of your application. If you have not received a decline message or anything that's really canceling the requisition, continue to follow up and just give them some patience and some grace during this time. I know it is completely anxious on the candidate side as you're waiting to hear, but so much is up in the air for companies nowadays that you just have to give them a little extra time, continue to follow up. And even if the requisition was canceled at this time, a lot of times recruiters are being told to pipeline, continue to speak to candidates. So when the role becomes open again later, you're first in line and you kept in touch with your recruiter, you kept in touch with the hiring leader. So they're like, you know what, that person was so gracious when we had to do this.
Yeah.
They're going ahead and pulling you through the process once it's open again.
It is so important to keep those connections up. Even if you have a job that you're kind of interested in and you get turned down for that, you still have that recruiter's information, so you can reach out for other potential positions in that company. That's been a really great resource for a lot of our readers and for myself and a lot of my fellow journalist friends in the industry. And so for those of you that are just tuning in, we have Kimberly B. Cummings here. She is a career and leadership expert and the founder of Manifest Yourself. You can follow her on Instagram at kimbcummings.com. Don't forget to drop in your questions below, you guys, because some of them will be shown on screen. We have a couple other questions here, Kim. So we did solicit some questions from money readers. We did solicit some questions from your readers as well. But what if people were laid off, you know, in order to restructure their resume, are there any things that they can focus on during the pandemic and ways they can pivot their resume to kind of tailor to different jobs?
So I wouldn't necessarily say you need to pivot your resume, but I think you need to be very certain of the exact skill set that you're bringing to the workforce. I think so many times as business owners, we know that in order to make money, you serve like with a product or a service. That's what you provide your community. But as employees, people are still kind of unsure. They're talking about like, I'm a jack of all trades, just give me a chance. Like I've done a bunch of things. I'd be great a lot of places in your company, but that's not going to help you as you're navigating your job search. When you're thinking about your resume and you're thinking about the conversations you're having, make sure you're honing in so you are a great fit for the role that you're applying to. So you're putting the experiences that are closely related to that job at the top of the bullet points. And I definitely recommend bullet points, not paragraphs by any means, because it's easier to read for those recruiters and hiring leaders. So start with the most specific information at the top that's closely related to the job, and then trickle that down slowly but surely into things that aren't as relevant. And make sure you're positioning yourself for that role and not just a whole bunch of roles. I think when we're applying in times like this and you really want to get the job, maybe you were just laid off, maybe you're just ready for a transition, it's so easy to kind of push and just really kind of have a little bit of desperation toward your job search. And I completely understand why you would feel desperate. I'm like, a lot of people do, they need to work, but that's not the energy you want people to feel when they're interacting with you and when they're looking at your documents. They need to know you're a specialist with a defined skill set that aligns to the company mission and vision.
Definitely. And we chatted a little bit about this, putting obviously the most important things at the top. But we have a question from our audience here that says, how do you feel about summaries at the top of your resume? How do you feel about little blurbs about yourself? And what is the argument between a 1-page and a 2-page resume?
Okay, so first I'll hit the summaries. If you have a lot of experience, and when I say a lot of experience, I'm saying over 7 years, over 10 years, and you really need to tie together the different experiences. So I wouldn't be able to look at your resume and quickly understand why you made the moves. Then you could potentially use a summary. But if you are under 7 years, under 5 years in the workforce, really worked in the same industry and similar type of roles, there's really no need for a summary. And in terms of 1-page versus 2-page, what I tell every client who I work with is, if I'm going to a second page, give me a reason to go to the second page. Your second page shouldn't just be those jobs that you just didn't want to cut off. If they're not related to the job that you're applying for, and you can think about cutting them down a little bit, then there's no need to go to a second page. Second pages are reserved for when you have experiences that you know the company still needs to see. It's not just where the skills run off or those unrelated jobs or that transition you had a few years ago that wasn't really relevant. Hack that off and make sure that it's a defined one page if there's no reason for the recruiter to go to the second page.
And not adding on your internship from 12 years ago.
Yes, and people do that. Like, I get it. I always say pretend that you're looking over your best friend's resume, or think about what the hiring leader would think of. Like, if they would easily take those things off or they wouldn't ask you questions about it during an interview, then it doesn't need to be there.
Definitely. Makes total sense. So, you know, obviously during the pandemic, and again, for those of you watching, please comment below. Some of your questions will pop up at the end. But, you know, we're here with Kimberly B. Cummings. We're talking about career and resume and looking for a job in the middle of a pandemic. So, Kim, obviously the quarantine has taken its mental toll on so many people. It's really hard to stay motivated. Yes. It is, you know, and especially for some people who have side hustles and full-time jobs, just being at home and not being able to really go anywhere or do anything, you know, kind of stifles that creativity in that way. So how can people kind of focus on their career growth right now, and still keep a clear vision as to where they're going in their careers?
So I think this really boils down to resilience. I did a presentation the other day talking about what does resilience mean during uncertain times in the workforce. I think you can still move your career forward. You can still think about getting promotions. You can still think about making career transitions. But the key is making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you're able to be resilient and bounce back. I'm not sure if anyone's read the book Grit. They talk about resilience there, or there's a theory on like macro resilience and micro resilience, but it's what are the little things you can do every single day that improve your productivity, improve your brain function, help you contribute to your team. Sometimes they're little things, sometimes they're big things. So for me, I realized that I had ended up spending weeks in my house and not leaving. I would come out my bedroom, I would go to the kitchen, and I would go work in my office. And by the time the day was over, I was just tired and I'd go back to bed. And like, I realized that was not healthy. Today on my Insta stories, I shared that I started listening to music again while I was working. It's such a simple thing, but I forgot in these open space environments, many of us are working in open space work environments. So some people have headphones. I don't really believe in having the headphones on in open space environments. That's just my preference. I never want to miss anything. But I realized sitting in my office, playing my music, burning candles, I'm in my own space. I don't have to treat myself like I'm in the normal corporate structure. And that alone increased my productivity, improved my mood, and really helped me show up even better at the work I was doing for my business and for my 9-to-5 job as well. So I think it's, as you're navigating these uncertain times, you have to give yourself grace, but just figure out how to foster a sense of resilience in yourself so you can continue to get up and do this work and charge forward. If you need to rest, go ahead and rest. If you feel like you can charge forward and really go after that new idea and that new promotion, go for that too. I know Maria was talking about dance party breaks. We were DMing about it earlier. And if you need to have a dance party break, do that. For me, it's taking a 15-minute walk outside and just getting a little air.
And listen, you know, obviously being stuck at your house and being quarantined is really, you know, it takes a lot of mental toll, and taking walks and taking little breaks and making sure that you have a structure in your day that kind of mimics what you were doing at the office. I do have a question here from our audience that says, how do you approach salary negotiation in these times? And what if your salary was cut?
So if your salary was cut, I'm praying that it's for a defined amount of time. A lot of companies are asking employees to take a cut for 6 months, for 4 months. And at that point, there's really nothing that you can do. If you have a side hustle, it may be time to kind of pick up and see if you can make up some of the income there. But when it comes to salary negotiation, I had this conversation yesterday with my husband. There was an organization that was talking about creating a workshop, and we talked about salary negotiation. And they're like, we have a lot going on now. I'm like, but the value of your work, if you're still doing the same work, it's valued at a certain price. You still should approach negotiating your salary in the same way you would before COVID. They may have a little less leeway in what they'd be able to do, but don't forget about negotiating your salary. 100% go in there and ask for what you know you're worth based upon your skills and experience. Remember that salary negotiation is less about, oh, I need this number. I want to see this number in my paycheck. I want to take this home. And it's much more about the skills and experience that you're able to provide to that company to help them hit their bottom line, help them hit their goals.
Definitely. So I'm going to take a couple of these questions from our audience here. This one is from Victoria. What makes lockdown an interesting time to find a job?
Everything. Everything. I feel like a lot of people really value that in-person connection. And I think given that we're this social distancing, lockdown, quarantine, whatever you want to call it, we really have to rely on digital tools to connect. And some people may not be able to thrive as well as they did before in phone interviews and video interviews, having that connection. So I think that it's unique for the individual, but it's also unique for the hiring leaders. There are hiring leaders who did not believe in working remotely and are now forced to believe it and leading virtual teams. So I think there's constraints and there's positives and negatives on everyone's side, not just the candidates.
Definitely. Another question here is, what are your thoughts on using executive recruiting or recruiting agencies?
So I think there's a time and a place for them. If you feel like you really need the assistance in taking your career to the next level, I generally advise this for more senior level clientele. So if you're applying for VP level jobs, more executive roles, chief officer roles, I think there really is a place for headhunters, executive agencies, if you feel that you need that. But for anything below that, I generally think that you can really manage your own job search, like getting your documents together, applying, networking, all of those things. You may not necessarily need those, especially if they're coming at a price to the candidate and it's not being absorbed by the company.
Definitely. And we have a couple other questions here. I mean, is it a good time to switch careers in the middle of a pandemic? What do you think, Kim? We've talked about this a little bit.
There's a risk to everything. I just had this conversation with one of my clients about a month ago. They were really gearing up to have a full-scale job search. And I said, you honestly just need to weigh all of your options. You need to determine, are you going to be okay regardless of what happens? So you could have a stable job right now, know that your company isn't laying off folks. You could make a career transition, you can get to the next company, and you could get laid off.
Yeah.
Or you could continue in that job and be perfectly happy. You just don't know, but it's definitely a risk. So I'm asking all my clients just to be prepared, and just put a little extra thought and effort into those conversations that you're having, really learning the state of the company, knowing what some of their policies are, knowing how they think about it. How does your role impact the bottom line? Why is it essential that they're hiring during COVID? Make sure that you really get to the bottom of this to ensure that you're comfortable with the decision that you're making, because it could potentially be a risk.
Definitely. And, just a couple more questions here, and then we will end this. But this is Kimberly B. Cummings. Please go follow her on Instagram at Kim B. Cummings. She's been doing an amazing takeover on our Instagram story today, talking about what keeps her motivated. That recipe you were making looked awesome, by the way.
Thank you. I love Terry. She actually reached out. She DM'd me. She's like, oh my gosh, thanks so much for sharing. But everything Terry has is incredible. I've made so much of her stuff.
I love it. So one final question. We've been talking a lot about, in other lives, we've been talking a lot about side hustles and having a full-time job and having a side hustle. How do you feel about, because you have a side hustle, Manifest Yourself is your side hustle. You work full-time at a Fortune 500 company. So what is your opinion on people just starting a side hustle now in this pandemic?
I think, why not? I'm a big believer in having multiple streams of income. My husband and I have an investment property. Like you said, I work full time. I have my business. If you really have a passion, invested interest, or you feel like there's a need that you can serve through a product or service, go for it. What I do always tell people, though, is that having a side hustle, having a business, it's not as easy as it looks. It's not necessarily like you sitting on a beach with a laptop like you see sometimes that everyone thinks it is. It's like, no, it's a lot of late nights, early mornings. It's a lot of extra work to be going into a full-time job and then coming back at night and working on your side hustle or whenever you have the time to work on it. But if you really have a passion and a need, and you feel like you can serve an audience, then go forth. I definitely don't discourage it.
I agree. I mean, interviewing CEOs and entrepreneurs at Money Magazine, it's just do it. Just start it. Just get it done. And right now, as Susie Moore said in a video that we had previously, there's no FOMO. No one is out at bars. No one is doing anything. So if you have an idea to start a side hustle, do it. It's a lot of work. It's going to take you a lot of time, but you'll be so grateful that you started it now, especially if it's something that you're very passionate about. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Kimberly B. Cummings. She is a career and leadership expert. She is also the founder of manifestyourself.com. Go follow her on Instagram at Kim B. Cummings. She also did an Instagram story takeover on our story. So once this thing ends, you guys can go back on her stories and check that out. But Kim, thank you so much. You're so great. You're so knowledgeable. Where can people email you? Can people follow you on Instagram, tweet you? Where can they find you?
Yes, definitely. Of course, get me on Instagram. That's where we are now. You can go to my website, manifestyourself.com. Or if you have any direct questions, please feel free to email hello@manifestyourself.com, and I'll get right back to you.
Awesome. All right, guys, you heard it here. Thanks so much for tuning in, money viewers. We will see you guys next week.
Yes.
Bye. Bye, Kim.
See you.